I think it's a scary time. I think it's a really scary time to be out as a trans person, a queer person, whatever may have you.
Being a teenager, difficult. Being a queer teenager, difficult. Because, let's face it, like, when you're a young teenager, resources are really hard to come by if you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah, growing up queer was definitely tough. It was the first time I got called a faggot.
But there are ways to resist, and there are ways to work with your community against people that want to bring them down. So yes, New York City is a safe space for queer people. Yes, I am eternally grateful to the city for fostering me and letting me thrive as a queer person.
My full name is Catherine Olivia Ellis, and I'm from Richmond, Virginia.
My name is Yolpi Kaiser, and I'm from Long Island, New York.
My name is Zachary Williams. I'm from Kings Park, Long Island, New York, and I am the Youth Services Coordinator for the LGBT Network on Long Island.
I identify as genderqueer, which kind of, to me, falls under the umbrella of trans, and I use they, them, and also sometimes he, him pronouns.
I closely identify with. Queer, I think, is more of an umbrella term nowadays, but I feel like I have to be more strongly associated with lesbian to be visible in the community.
You know, I thought that I would never be able to live my life as an out gay man, thought I was gonna have to marry a woman and put on a facade for my entire life, and I am a flaming homo now, so I'm glad I stuck around, you know? Because I like flaming homo Zach, you know?
I moved to New York, like, kind of with knowing that I really needed that kind of space. When I was looking for a place to live, that, like, that type of community was what I needed at that time. When I was, like, growing up in high school and middle school, there were very few other queer people. I actually didn't come out as trans until, like, the year in between my last year in high school and my first year in college. But people thought I was weird. They definitely thought I was a little bit of a freak. And whether that was because I was queer or because I'm just a freak anyways, unsure. I learned really early on that, you know, there was a certain level of weirdness that was palatable and, like, arguably even cool. Were there times, like, throughout my schooling experience that I did feel unsafe? Yeah, like, there were a lot of, like, football kids who, like, thought they were a big meech, and I remember this one time, a good friends, who actually goes to Hunter too, and is still one of my good friends, experienced, like, very severe bullying in high school, and, like, has a lot of residual, like, trauma from that experience, and has perhaps had an easier time since they moved to New York City, but, like, definitely in Long Island, like, not too far from where I'm from, had a really difficult time. Well, I actually live right now in an all-trans collective in Flatbush, which is a very safe space. It's a very loving space. It's a very important space for me. It's a very validating space where the people I live with are, like, very down to just, like, talk about shit. I think that's been one of the most trans positive spaces that I've, like, ever been in. Also, another one, I work at a queer teen camp in upstate New York, and it's also very queer friendly for adults and for teens. I'm a counselor there, and, you know, all of them are struggling with something usually, or so they come, and there's, like, all these classes and workshops that are happening where, you know, either we're just, like, straight up having fun, or, like, we're talking about, like, the deep, scary shit that's, like, going on in all of our lives, and, like, our feelings. You know, we talk about our feelings, which is very important. And yeah, we just try to foster a space where, like, kids feel like they have the room to grow and, like, think about themselves, maybe in ways that they haven't before, like, really, like, crack into that heavy shit, the deep shit, and do some serious like self-assessment. And being like a guiding light for these like younger queer people, it's been super awesome to see, because you also like learn a lot about yourself from talking to younger queer people. And like I've worked through a lot of my issues that stem from like that time in my life by like seeing other kids going through it and like helping them work through it, which has been like a really validating experience.
It's odd because Long Island is right next to one of the most progressive, blue, diverse, multicultural cities in the world, and Long Island is still a little bit of a conservative stronghold in terms of beliefs and feelings about LGBTQ people. Yes, I do see kids on Long Island struggling. I also see them thriving, but I also see them struggling, particularly those in our trans community, because I feel that the arc of justice has bent a little bit more towards justice for LGBT people in terms of like social acceptance of sexuality, but gender is still a pretty, for some reason, contentious topic to talk about and to live if you are not a cis person. Hate crimes still happen. Gay bashing is still a thing where people will come in from, I'm gonna say Long Island, but could come in from Jersey, upstate, or even, someplace in New York City, go get a group of friends together and go beat the shit out of a gay person. Still happens, According to the FBI crime report, hate crimes since 2015, when our current president started his presidential campaign, hate crimes have increased each year since 2015, specifically against people of different races and people of different gender and sexual orientations. The average life expectancy of a trans woman of color is 35, not 80, Most everyone else gets to live long, happy lives if they have the means to do so. Trans women are murdered and assaulted at a rate far greater than any other demographic. I think being a queer person living in New York City is incredibly different than being a queer person living in the Bible Belt South, The
juxtaposition of how it feels to be queer in New York City versus how it feels to be queer in Virginia is pretty drastic. I mean, New York City is much more liberal than anywhere I've ever lived. I got opportunities like Broadway auditions, and I have my manager here in New York, and I play at clubs at night and stuff like that. So I started to make a community for myself, and as an actor, I was told that maybe I'd want to keep my personal life private because it would hinder me from getting certain roles because people want to believe the characters they're playing. Anywhere in the United States, you have to be very careful about where you are and who you're with and cognizant of your surroundings. And there were times when I was with my girlfriend at the time where we'd be in my hometown and I'd be like, baby, we can't hold hands. Like, that's dangerous. I grew up in a neighborhood that both entrances were flagged by churches. Actually, recently, my girlfriend and I, we traveled back to Virginia. There was a billboard as I was passing, and it said, "Nobody's born homosexual." The climate and what's acceptable to be able to say and do in the South is a little different. I knew I was queer since I was 12 years old. And, I was forced to come out on Halloween because iPhone outed me. And it was when the picture messages decided to show up on the lock screen. I was dating a senior my freshman year in college, and she had sent a picture and it showed up on my lock screen, and it just so happened my mom was next to me and she had found my phone. I was about to go out and my mom was like, you need to tell us if you're gay or not. And I was like, and she wouldn't let me leave the house because I lived at home for the first 2 years of college to save money. My dad had not kind things to say. When one of your parents says, I'm not sure if I can love you anymore, that's a tough one. So once that got out, I started to get harassed on Facebook. The initial reaction was really harsh, and I'm never going to forget it. Come so far as a familial unit, and they've worked so hard to be accepting and loving, and where we are now is astronomically different from where we began. So when I go back and I'm like, oh, this was not great to start off with, so I preface this with, they're the most loving and accepting and supportive people in my life, but coming out was incredibly difficult. In high school, I didn't know anything about women's studies. We don't learn anything about that. I didn't know anything about the Stonewall riots. I didn't know anything about queer history. I didn't know about transgender. We didn't talk about homosexuality. And when you're talking about queerdom in general, we didn't talk about what the biology of gender versus sexuality. We didn't talk about any of that. So I think when we're talking about this societal movement, we need to start with education.
So education, I think, would be a huge, huge help to this, and starting young. Teaching young children about gender at a young age. I'm going to look back on this hopefully sooner rather than later and think, what the hell were we doing? What the hell was going on? So glad we're not there anymore. So glad I can, hold my trans siblings' hand in pride and honor, and hopefully they have a long and meaningful life.
People just need to have some more resources, get a little bit more educated, especially on intersectionality. The biggest issue, I think, with our lack of unison is that people don't really understand intersectionality. And by not understanding it, it's easy to keep perpetuating violence against the most marginalized groups in our community.
You're not alone. You're not the first person to go through this, definitely. And you're not the last person who's going to go through it. If you are not out yet and you are not in a environment that it would be safe for you to come out, don't feel the pressure to come out just because everyone else is. But if your food, water, and shelter are in jeopardy if you come out, wait until you're going to be in a safe place as an out queer person.
Yeah, come out on your own terms, on your own time. It's your decision, it's your choice, it's your life. Live it how you want to. Nobody has to make you do anything you don't want to do. Do what you feel comfortable with.
You are loved, you are valid, and a human being just like every other of the 7 billion of us on this planet. There's nothing wrong with you, and you'll get through it. There'll be another day.